we're going to go ahead and get started on today's webinar, which is the first part of a two-part series for fundraising. So today's webinar is going to be consisting on understanding the basics of fundraising. So last week we got a chance to take a look at contact records, building search queries, and so forth. This week we're going to be focusing on fundraising itself. So we do have a few learning objectives today. The first one is going to be to properly set up a fundraising campaign. We're going to learn a couple different ways on how and where you would be able to enter contributions and where you would need to go in order to process your payments. So before we get started, I do want to go ahead and let everyone know that everyone has been muted for the sake of uh, being respectful towards others in regards to, limiting the background noise and so forth. So if at any point in time you do have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box and they will get addressed towards the end of the webinar. Last but not least, these webinar trainings are being recorded. So what we do is we are embedding them into our support center. So if at any point in time you need to access these recordings for, additional staff training or just reference back for a mind refresher, you can go ahead and access them in our support center through webinar recordings. And then also you can access them with closed captioning services, as that is part of YouTube's automated system that they integrate with when you upload your video onto their YouTube channel. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And then also, before I go ahead and just dive in on how to properly set up a fundraising campaign, if you ever have any questions, feel free to use our support request. One of our staff members will get back to you in a timely manner. Depending on the queue, we usually like to make sure we get back to you within the same day. But if we have it backed up, it may be within the 24 hours. So just make sure you have that available, and our support center is also available through this link here, and for free trainings, the link below. All right, so what we're going to go ahead and focus on today is going to be fundraising itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on campaigns, so we can just go to that particular page first. So to give you a little bit more of a background context before we go ahead and start, within the context of the data bank, which is the software we are using, campaigns refer to any type of marketing initiative to solicit responses from contacts or prospective contacts of your data bank. So within the fundamental level, campaigns are just a means of organizing your data. So you have this data and you have this structure, and you want to be able to classify it into campaigns to be able to search it and act upon it. So whether you do thank you letters or build reports. So to give you a better demonstration, I want to go ahead and show you this campaign structure that we have here. This is available through our support center. So if you just look up campaign structure within the search bar, you'll be able to look up this particular page as well. So in this particular campaign structure image, we have the main concept of a contribution hierarchy, right? So we have the type, the campaign associated to that contribution type, the segments pertaining to that particular one single campaign, and the different donation amounts associated to that segment. So, in other words, there we have another example here. So, we have the special events campaign type, right? Based on the special events campaign type, we have three different campaigns created. We have the house parties, we have the baseball game, and we have the award banquet. Within this third campaign, we have four different segments. Depending on what you want to um, record your data and classify your data, you're going to build different segments. So table sales, program ads, individual gifts, and silent auction. So what this means is that there may be just different donation amounts associated to the segment of the campaign. So in instance, it's going to be $5, $100, and $1,000 for individual gifts. And that's only pertaining to one specific campaign and, different segments attributed to it. So that's pretty much the main concept that is associated when you are creating a campaign. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I can go ahead and create a brand new campaign. In this instance, we have, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to end up building, is, for example, this fundraising levels for fiscal year 19. So you have a company membership, family membership, or an individual membership. In previous times, memberships were pretty much just classified as kind of recurring donations. It really depends on how you want to segment your data, right? So it could be the case that your organization has just web donations in general, and each year you start creating different segments based on that year. Obviously, what that will mean is that you're just going to have a clustered of amount of donations. So it really just depends on how you want to sort your data, report on your data, and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and do add new campaign. And we get to this particular page. The main section that is essential when creating campaign is the name, the type, if you have sub-orgs, the organization. If you don't have any sub-orgs, you don't have to worry about this field. But the campaign code and the description. All these other fields are totally optional. You don't necessarily have to fill out. It just helps you keep track of, estimated averages or predictions that you think might occur, and you can come back and later report and compare on what your predictions were to what your actual results were. So in this case, I'm just going to put in this case, I'll just do donations 2020. And then we'll just put fiscal year 2020. This is we're just going to be online as our campaign type. So here earlier we saw how we had the three different campaign types. So we have special events, sales and fees, general donations, conference, and so forth. Because I know I'm going to attribute this particular campaign to my form, I'm just going to go ahead and associate it to name. And then here, just gonna because it's part of our nonprofit, I'm just going to put it under Data Bank Essentials. So here in this dropdown, we just saw the different sub-organizations associated to my database. The campaign number, this is going to be internally. So all this information, your prospects or constituents won't be seeing this on there. It's just more for internal purposes only. So donate 2020, and just going to put and submit. And so when we go ahead and fill this information, so like I said, if you did fill out your projections, it would appear that information on your left side. If once you start building your donation and your amount, your actual dollar and projections will be displayed on the right. So it's just a way to kind of compare and contrast, what you expected versus the actual thing that you got. So once you have built the name of your campaign, you're not done yet. You want to make sure you always, always, always include a segment. So earlier, like I said, segments can be used to categorize your donations by your various criteria. So for example, if you are doing an annual fundraising event, you could create different segments based upon your ticket sales, sponsorship donations, auction purchases, and so forth. So in this case, what we're going to go ahead and do, because this is just general membership, so we're going to do general donate, general donations. And again, the code automatically gets generated, and it'll pretty much just allow you to see what code is attributed to that particular segment. So it doesn't really matter per se what you name it. It's just going to be for reporting purposes. The quantity, this is again optional as well. And it just pretty much is going to give you like a limit if you want to set a limit to how much of these you want to have. So for example, if they were ticket sales, you wanted it limited to a certain amount, you could do so. Otherwise, leave it blank. If we're talking about memberships, so like let's say a recurring donation or type of thing like that, you would probably want to associate, a renewal period of a year rather than any of the 2 or 3 years. But in this case, we're just going to leave it blank. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a different one. And it's going to be, and then just so you know, like the name, it does have a max of characters. So it has a 10 character limit, but within the description, you can just enter the whole name. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. And as you can see, like, because I'm going as the code, it pretty much just goes ahead and takes, donate A and then donate B, donate C, and so forth. You can always go ahead and change it if you want. But once you do go ahead and create your segments, you're pretty much ready to go and create your donation form attributed to your meeting or event and recurring donations. All right, so what we're going to do, we're just going to leave it as that. And pretty much this summarizes, how we would properly set up our fundraising campaign. So we're just going to keep in mind that it's our donations FY 2020 campaign, and these are the two types of segments that we attributed to it. If there was a renewal period, it would appear here. The contribution count, it's going to be the number of donations we've received. And then the contribution total is going to be the total dollar amount of contributions we received for that particular segment. So there's a couple of ways that you can enter a payment within your data bank. The first way is that you're going to go to the Payments tab. When I go to the Payments tab, I will have two things, right? This is the main page where you're going to go to process your unposted payments. Keep in mind that you always have to post your payments in order for them to be shown to that specific contact record. And then also, depending on your payment gateway, which is in most instances, you will have to post it in order for them to get processed. So meaning that the payment will be sent out to your payment gateway, whether it's PayPal or IADS. I believe with both, you do have to submit some sort of information over here on the bottom. Once you do that, you do still have to click post in order for that payment information to be attributed to that specific contact record. So again, the way that you would go ahead and do this would be by clicking on this little checkbox and click process selected payments. If it's the case that you're receiving a check, the best way to go ahead and handle these type of payments that you have received is by one, ensuring that your check has been received by your office/organization, and two, once you have verified that information, go back to the payment section and click post so that payment does get attributed. If it's just a check that gets sent out or received by your organization without the individual filling out a form, then you can just manually enter the payment. So we just checked on how we could process a payment. The first way of adding a payment would be, again, one way, go to payments, and we're in this page, and we click on add payment. Keep in mind that when you do it this way, it will open a blank page where you can enter a brand new contact. It's pretty much the best way to enter a payment for a contact that doesn't exist within your data bank. So you fill out, their first name, their address, their email address, and any additional information that you may know. You scroll to the bottom of the page and you go ahead and enter that contribution information. So in instance, you go ahead and say, okay, it's a renewal. It's going to be credit, right? Once you do the credit, I obviously don't have a gateway because it's a test database. But you select the payment method. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and say donations, FY 2020, select the segment. So it's going to be a general donation. And here I get prompted, okay, is it going to be a one-time donation, a recurring donation, and so forth? Okay, no, it's just going to be a one-time donation, right? You enter that information, one time, enter the card information, so forth, billing information, etc. Again, if you decide it's, in ACH, which is payment received, from bank accounts or savings account, you go ahead and enter that information there. So again, this is the best way to go ahead and enter a payment for a contact record that doesn't exist within your data bank. However, In most cases, it's going to be the case that you're going to want to enter a payment that already for a contact that already exists within your data bank. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to that contact record. So whether you search via their contact ID, their name, or email address, the easiest way for you to go ahead and do that. So in this case, I'm just going to go to Maria Tester's account, and in order to enter this new payment, I can go ahead and click on this credit card icon to add a new payment. Once I do that, it's just going to automatically fill everything out that I have for this individual. And I'm going to go ahead and follow the same steps as I would have done within the previous example. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and click new. It's going to be credit, as an example, and fill out that information and click submit. Keep in mind, even though when you click submit, you will still have to go to payments and post the specific payment to ensure that that payment does get processed. Once you do that, then it will go ahead and show within that contribution record for that specific individual. Otherwise, if you don't post it, it won't show. And then also, sometimes it happens that individuals do create the campaign but forget um, the campaign segment. And while sometimes it will go ahead and process that specific campaign segment, it will be considered as an orphan contribution, meaning that it will be waiting and be sitting in limbo for it to be attributed to a particular segment. If and when that happens, and we're going to be going a little bit more in depth in next session, but you have a report called a orphan contribution report where you can go ahead and fix these type of donations and make sure that these donations do go through and get associated to these contact records. So a lot of the times individuals say, oh, well, what happened with this particular donation? I don't see it. What's going on? So the first step would just be to double check this report and make sure that it's not there, and make sure that one, your contribution itself does have a segment attributed to it, or a campaign attributed to it. So that's pretty much what we have for today. So again, we learned how to build a campaign. Through your campaign section, we learned two different ways on how we would go ahead and go about enter our contributions within your data bank. You could always, submit a form if you want to do it that way, but we did it the two ways via your data bank and saw how we could process payments. So this concludes today's webinar. So I will go ahead and answer any questions.